Hey, this is Reed Ward. I'm out here playing Winthrop Meadows today. The college ladies played this last year, and I thought I'd do a video on it. So the first hole is about 210, 215 feet straight down that gap. You have about a 30-foot gap with the 15-foot ceiling max. So I just put it down there with a little compass. I'm about 30 feet long. You want to play this a little bit on the short side. As long as you miss the big bush on the right side, you should be alright, just giving yourself a 15-footer, 20-footer, so feel free to use a putter on that. It's definitely a hole that you want to birdie, but if you par it, I mean, don't be mad because it's the first hole, but you shouldn't have a problem. You shouldn't make a bogey on it. So hole 2, 250 feet, it goes slight left, and there's two kind of guardian trees, but you have to hit the initial 15-foot gap, which is pretty tricky. So I'm throwing the same compass, trying to get it to just turn over a little bit because I am a lefty. If you feel confident on this hole as a righty, send it. If you don't, just throw 120, 150 feet, and you'll have an easy pitch up for par. But yeah, you don't want to hit those initial trees. So I did hit that guardian tree and was down there for about a 25-footer. A straddle putt. I hate straddle putts because I don't practice them enough. So that's another par for me, so I'm even at this point. Hole 3 is probably 290 to 310. It goes pretty much right off of here, and then the basket's kind of up. There's a sand bunker to the right and behind it. So you don't want to be too long, but it's not that much of an elevation difference, so don't sweat it too much. But you don't want to be super right off of the tee. You want to hit it pretty much straight on. Another one of those holes, if you're comfortable sending it, then send it. If you're not comfortable, just throw it 150 feet and you'll have an easy layup for par. I had a pretty good shot there. It got caught up in the grass though, so I was probably 35 feet away. Here's a good example of that slope not really mattering much. Just don't let it get in your mind, and if you miss it, then you just have to put in the extra 2 to 3 feet uphill from your normal putt, but I hit it there, so that was good. Alright, hole 4, 277 feet, plays more like 310. There's a slight incline the whole way up. It's barely noticeable, but you will leave yourself short if you don't throw it like it's 310. A lot of people leave it short, and it's not that difficult of a hole. It's not a bogey hole. You just have to send it right off the tee. That was a Dynasty. That's a 9-speed kind of semi-stable driver, and I actually hit the pole there, so that was a good shot. I was throwing a Crave before this, an Axiom Crave, which is like a 7-speed, and it just didn't cut the trick because it's uphill. All right, hole 5, 280. This is a great righty hole. The basket's kind of tucked in this little cove to the left. I was throwing a super flippy Dynasty there, and it says it's like 270, 275, and it plays like it's 270, 275. A lot of times the branches will catch that. The branches didn't catch it for me, so I was about 20 feet long, kind of in the junk. If you're a righty, you just want to put it 15, 20 feet to the right of the basket. Don't even fool around with the woods, but that's another par for me. All right, hole 6, 243. Another good hole for a righty. You can just throw a big hyzer around to the right, and it's pretty wide open. Or you can try a forehand down. There's about a 15-foot gap at 190 feet, which I don't have that powerful of a forehand, so I have to go through the left gap, which is pretty sketchy. But either way, it's definitely birdieable. You just have to put the heat on it. That was a really good shot, but it nicked the last branch on that tree, so it fell down short. But if you're a righty, just full send something on hyzer around way to the right and let it come back. And if they haven't mowed, you should get a little skip and you should be pretty close. So here's another par. All right, hole 7. This is a must get, I would say. It's 220 feet. And if you're playing with or against any righties, you can just throw a mid-range shot just right down the right side and just let it skip back to the basket. If you're a lefty, you can do the same thing, but there's kind of a tree in your way, but you can work around it. but it's 220 feet. So if you're playing, once again, it's not a bogey hole. It's a birdie hole. Try not to settle for par if you've been doing this. So that was about a 40-foot putt. That was a good one. By the way, I am 937 rated. I think this course, if you shoot even, will probably be rated 860, 865. So it's a little bit easier of a course. It was designed this year with our college ladies in mind. So it's a little bit shorter. It's got some technical stuff though. So this is hole 8. It's like a 450-foot par 4. You just want to throw a righty forehand or a lefty backhand down into that ravine. If you're not comfortable with that, just throw it 150 feet up on the hill and don't go down into the bottom there. That way you'll be level with the basket and your 300-foot shot will be the same as if you're 50 feet farther, but 30 feet downhill. So don't feel pressure to absolutely bomb it. You'll still at least make par and you'll have a chance at birdie. So that's about a 22 footer probably. The wind was picking up at this point, so still got it. So that was a good feeling. My putting was pretty good today. So that was good. Hole 9, 180 feet. It seems too easy, but I still have never gotten it within circle 1. I don't know why. It's just a mental game at this point. There's a branch about 10 feet off the ground in your gap, and I just can't hit the gap or just leave it short every time. So that one was short. I was about 35 feet here. The basket is elevated, but once again, not a hole you want to bogey. I mean, even if you throw it 80 feet, you still have a 90-foot pitch up for a tap in. So that was a good putt. Another good birdie. And yeah, that felt good. So hole 10, par 3, 149 feet island hole, and it drops off right behind the basket, so you can't put it long at all. In fact, if you skip at the basket, you'll go out of bounds. So you got to leave it short. For a righty, just a simple backhand, kind of on a little bit of hyzer. For me, I'm just throwing it backhand, a little bit of hyzer, and I'm 15, 16 feet, and hit that putt. If you're any farther than 20, 25 feet, or if you have a headwind, just depending on how you're putting, but sometimes it's just smart to lay it up because it's a straight drop off after there. All right, hole 11, 203 feet. There's a little righty gap, or righty backhand gap, to the right here, which I'm showing, which can work out well if you hit it, but it's also a small gap. To the left-handed backhand gap, or the righty forehand gap, is much better. It's about a 20-foot gap, and it slopes down too. So there I am throwing an overstable zone. It just gets a nice skip off the ground there, even though the grass is pretty tall down there, and gets to about 15 feet. So there are a couple trees. You just kind of got to get lucky and not be stuck behind them though. I've played this course probably half a dozen times, and I haven't stuck behind one of those dinky old oak trees before, but I didn't get stuck there. Almost missed my putt, but you'll have that on them big jobs. Alright, another good birdie. Hole 12, par 4, 579 feet. Doesn't feel like 579 feet, but I mean, sometimes I think the sun's going to be a little bit off. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So that was a Axiom Tantrum. It's just an overstable 14-speed driver. Just throwing it down there, 350, 400 feet, and leaving myself about a 200-foot approach shot. This can be a tricky hole if you can't throw 400 feet because the plateau starts at like 360, 370 feet, I want to say, and before that it's kind of a gully. So if you're not up on that plateau, it can be a long upshot to have a chance at birdie. But if you can make it there, then that's good. Not a great approach, about 20-footer, but hit that. So was feeling pretty good with another birdie. So this is a tough hole. This is about a 7-foot gap for the first 60 feet. So for the first 20 yards, and you just gotta pick a target and throw. And if you're not comfortable with throwing, you know, I say throw 50, throw 60% power, or just put it out. I mean, do whatever you have to do. So all these trees on the right side, you can cut through them at any point, but there is a gap about 300 feet up with the basket a little bit beyond that. So there I am throwing my Understable Dynasty by Infinite. And that was a good throw. That got about 320 out. And then I actually didn't film my first shot. I just threw another forehand for fun. I was trying to throw it low. Well, my first shot was perfect. It was low. It was going to skip as that Axiom Tantrum, but the grass just caught it and it didn't skip. So there I am at about 40 feet. Missed my putt. No surprise. Kind of windy. So that was a par, which was fine because getting out of that gap is good. So here's one. You can play aggressive, but you don't have to. Not too many people birdie this hole, honestly. Partially because it says 280. It plays more like 300 though. But it's got a small-ish gap. I mean, it's a pretty good gap. But the basket's also kind of on a slope, so it makes return putts tricky, and it's usually windy right there. But that was a good shot and a good 16-footer to finish it. Well, not a great putt, but I mean it went in, so whatever. So I was feeling pretty good at this point. Hole 15. This is the classic, you know, the classic forehand roller hole, which I think is stupid. I always just throw it right. I forgot to record that though, but if you're a backhand righty, just throw it 100 feet. There's a big right gap and you can throw it out and then just pitch it up and have an easy par. It's not worth trying to go for birdie on this hole. I feel like one guy aced it throwing forehand roller on camera, and now everyone else is trying to throw a forehand roller, but it's really not the play and it'll cost you a stroke. Unless you're elite at a forehand roller, which I am not. So there's just an easy par. If you take par on this, especially if you're a woman playing in the national championship, you will be getting strokes on people. So just keep that in mind. This is like 230, 230, and then it drops off right behind the basket. The basket's elevated. I threw this a little bit short and just laid it up. Through a mid-range, that compass, so that it wouldn't roll. I threw my Understable compass, which is the white one. 17. Didn't film my drive like an idiot. I was getting kind of tired, but it was just a 350-foot drive. This is a hole, it says it's 650, so it should only be 150 feet longer than the par 4 a little bit earlier. But it plays like it's 250 feet longer. So I don't know if this signage is correct. It might be 700, but either way, you only have to throw 250 feet for 3 shots, and you have a tap in for birdie. So you don't have to try to crush it off the tee initially. You can just take your time, throw 85% power, get down, get an easy birdie. All right, hole 18. You got about a 10-foot gap, 60 feet off the tee. You hit that. If you're a righty, you're going to want to throw something understable backhand, or just put something semi-stable on the forehand there, but just make sure you hit that gap. I had a good throw. It hit that tree though, otherwise it would have been parked. Because I had thrown an Understable disc on hyzer and it was just gliding like beautiful. There's just a little layup. Got a weird skip to the right, kind of rolled next to the tree there, and just a standard, 10-foot tap in. So that was a par to finish it, and that was my round. So I finished 10 under here, which felt pretty good. That would probably play somewhere around 960, 970, maybe a little bit higher, but I think Davis York has the course record here with 16 under. So yeah, thanks for watching, and hope to catch you on the flip side.